it is, guys? It's your boy BlastphamousHD. One of my favorite people on the internet is Dan Bilzerian. Not because I think he's awesome, but because he is so obviously lying about nearly everything he's into, and no one's busted him yet, somehow. With that being said, we got hands down the best storyteller on all of the YouTubes to explain to us what actually happened to him. The FBI caught him or something. He in prison again? Damn.
Hey bro, we be making fun of our parents for believing everything on the internet, but don't act like this man didn't have us all fooled. Meet Dan, and you see, Dan had a problem. His life was crumbling before his very eyes, because you see, his living was based off of you believing he was rich. Listen, when you're a public figure and you have a company, stocks go up and down depending on you. Think about Elon Musk. When people like Elon Musk, stocks rise. When people didn't like him, stocks crash. Dan had this company called Ignite. Now, it was all fun and games until he fired his vice president. His vice president said, "You don't want to do that." Dan said, "And what you finna do about it?" His vice president said, Dan said, "What?" He said, "I'm finna get my get back." Oh, and he got his get back. In one of the pettiest moves I've ever seen, his vice president sues him for wrongful termination. But that wasn't why he sued him. He sued him so he can show the world how Dan was really spending his money. The judge said, "Sir, why are you here today?" He said, all the girls that you see Dan with, he just be renting them. He just be flying them out." Dan said, "Objection." The judge said, "Hold on, I want to hear this." He said, "Yeah, that mansion he said he bought, he just rents that too. He don't really got the money to afford it." The judge said, "All right, hold on, sir. All right, how is this relevant?" He said, "I'm gonna get to that. All the money Dan be spending on stuff, that's all the company's money. He don't really got money like that. He don't got bread like that." The judge said, "All right, come on now. How is Dan being a bum relevant?" Dan said, "Objection." The VP said, "Y'all got that down?" The typewriter said, "Oh, I got it right here." Now, as soon as the whole world hears this, Dan's stocks start to plummet. But remember how I told you they be going up and down depending on the person? His stocks start to rise again because he gets a new business advisor. But when they hear about who his business advisor was, it starts to plummet again because the business advisor was none other than his father, Paul Bilzerian. And here's where things start to get wicked. See, Paul Bilzerian was not allowed to technically be his advisor. Why, you ask? Well, because he's a felon, a certified scam artist. He specialized in corporate takeovers and was really good at hiding money. And he was ordered to pay all of that money back. He said, "I don't got it." So he filed for bankruptcy. But see, then people started to ask Dan, "How did you get all this money to start your company in the first place?" And that goes to how Dan started being famous in the first place. He first came out as a professional poker player, making a huge splash because he was very extravagant. He then claims to have won $50 million in a year. Poker players said, "Cap." He said, "Prove it." They said, "That poker series you played in, you was 180th place. I seen you play. You not that good." It almost seemed like you just wanted people to know you played poker. Not really. He said, "Let me just stop you right there. I don't play against famous players, dummy. I play against billionaires on the low secretly, so you can't prove it." But coincidentally, he started making a big splash in the poker scene around when his trust fund was activated. He then starts his company, and then they find out the person who gave him all that money in the first place was helping him run his company in the background. And now the FBI gets involved because you see, part of his conviction was if your name and company come up in the same sentence, we finna get on your ass. Paul said, "Oh, I ain't going back to the pen." He said, "I was just helping my son out for free because he was screwing up all his money." His son says, "I'm not close to my dad. I don't even know him like that." The FBI says, "Oh, you must think we stupid." So a judge orders Dan's company to give them financial documents. Dan's company literally says, "Objection." The judge said, "Boy." The judge starts hitting him with fine after fine after fine for every day he doesn't give the documents. Now, his dad said they eventually handed over the documents. They asked him in an interview, "You think the FBI was just trying to get their get back on you?" He said, "Maybe." After this, his company's stock collapses so hard he had to pull it off the stock market. And as his company's stock is decreasing, so is his real life stock. He's losing millions upon millions of followers a day. So then he comes out and says, "I'm broke, y'all." But see, once a scammer, always a scammer. He pivots to the easiest scam that you can do. Scamming dumb, insecure men into believing that he can turn you into a man. He starts hanging out with Andrew Tate, starts saying that I'm going to teach men how to be Sigmas. Guys, Dan is not your father, Andrew's not your brother. You're just their customers.
Damn, it looks like he really has gone the way of a bird that gets extinct or something. I don't
Nothing feels better than winning when people are patiently waiting to see you fail. Dan, you've lost 1 million followers in the last 12 months, seen your stock price plummet so low you had to take it off the stock exchange, and now spend the rest of your time copying Andrew Tate.
Yeah, we're gonna start a website called Sigma Society.
While rambling about politics on Twitter. This is basically the definition of failure, and here's exactly how it happened. Dan Bilzerian took his company Ignite public at a price of $2.50 per share back in January 2019, a time at which his career was going perfectly. His Instagram was gaining 400,000 followers per month, he was living in a $65 million mansion, and most importantly, everybody believed that his lifestyle was real. That would be until July 2020, 18 months after Ignite started, when Dan fired Ignite's vice president, who then sued Dan Bilzerian for unfair dismissal, in the process completely exposing his phony business model. For starters, the lawsuit explained that Dan Bilzerian hadn't actually paid $65 million for his mansion, but the property was rather rented for $2.4 million per year. On top of this, it was shown that Bilzerian paid for the travel expenses of the rotating cast of models that permanently accompany Bilzerian wherever he goes, despite Dan consistently stating that the girls were there voluntarily.
Did people ever believe that? I never did.
And paid for the travel expenses of the rotating cast of models that permanently accompany Bilzerian wherever he goes, despite Dan consistently stating that the girls were there voluntarily.
Do you pay these girls to come?
That's, okay, so
that's the big misconception,
yeah, I'm
right?
addressing that on my app.
However, the craziest part of the lawsuit outlined Dan's strange expenses, including $75,000 on a paintball field, $40,000 on a rock climbing wall, $60,000 on a Star Wars gun set, $31,000 on pool renovations, $50,000 on a bed frame, $15,000 on a ping pong table, and $88,000 on a vault, just to name a few. It was also stated that some business expenses charged to Ignite were for household items, groceries, and luxury yacht rentals, with a different former employee stating Ignite pays for everything. Models, events, yachts. Dan would just have it wrapped with the Ignite logo, and all of a sudden it was an Ignite expense, and he would send them the bill. Pools, trampolines, the employee added. His personal events that had nothing to do with the business. Dan responded by stating, "Some journalist said Ignite was funding my life. Bitch, I've been going hard for 10 years and been famous for going hard for 7. I started Ignite 2 years ago, raised around 100 mil, and I own the majority of the company, suck my dick," although his arrogant response failed to dismiss anything, especially the company's atrocious financial reports. Dan had spent a total of $69 million during Ignite's first year in business, which was offset by only $9.7 million in sales. Given the previously mentioned lawsuit explained how terribly this money was spent, Ignite's stock price plummeted by almost 90%, from $2.50 to a low of 28 cents in October 2020. As the media began to report on Dan's losses, he'd respond by stating Uber is worth $80 billion. It has never had a profitable month since it started, and it lost over $5 billion in one quarter last year. However, Ignite's financial losses weren't even the worst part. Ignite only had an audience because of Dan's extravagant life, which as a result of the lawsuit had been exposed as rented. His lifestyle was once mysterious and intriguing, but it lost its edge as soon as people realized it was just another business. On top of this, the whole mega rich guy on Instagram shtick was cool in 2014, but by 2020 everybody knew it was complete baloney, which began to reflect in Dan's Instagram statistics. In May 2020, Dan almost completely stopped posting to Instagram, and by the end of the year he'd begun to lose followers. In the meantime, the media speculated that he'd soon file for bankruptcy, to which Dan clapped back by tweeting a skeleton with the caption, "Or the dumbass journalist patiently waiting for Ignite to go bankrupt." Dan was right, Ignite wasn't filing for bankruptcy, but that didn't mean that things were going well. After losing $69 million in 2019, Ignite lost a further $19.7 million in 2020, during which the media released another strange detail. Dan Bilzerian's dad was supposedly running Ignite from behind the scenes. Now this was a problem for one main reason. Paul Bilzerian was a convicted felon who was legally prohibited from participating in publicly traded companies. He'd spent a year in jail for fraud in the 90s, leading Dan to pretend that they weren't that close.
I talk to him probably 4 or 5 times a year.
However, according to one article, Paul Bilzerian has taken a less shadowy role within the company, sending thousands of emails between himself and other top executives at Ignite. This was only speculation at the time, but if Paul was in fact running the company, he was starting to do something right. Despite losing $19.7 million in 2020, Ignite actually recorded a profit in their final quarter, leading Dan to tweet, "Ignite announces a profitable fourth quarter. I guess the press and the dumb YouTubers were wrong, shocking, the reason for which being explained in a Forbes article. For one, Ignite cut costs, slashing a promotional budget by nearly 75%. Pandemics meant fewer parties, and for Ignite that meant a chance at profit. As economic conditions improved in early 2021, the price of Dan's stock began to recover rapidly, quadrupling from 28 cents per share in October 2020 to $1.13 only 1 year later. In the process, Ignite increased its revenue from $16.9 million in 2020 to $78.8 million in 2021, at which point Dan made the claim that he wanted to sell the company.
$2 billion would be nice, because then I get over $1 billion.
However, the chance of achieving this kind of money began to look unlikely, as the value of Dan's company began to fall off a cliff. The recovery made by Dan in 2021 was completely reversed throughout 2022, owed in part to one particular incident. The SEC is suing Ignite Brands Ltd for failing to produce documents as it attempts to pursue an accounting fraud investigation. According to the SEC case, SEC staff have uncovered information indicating that respondents may have filed public financial statements that include false or misleading representations regarding revenues earned and recognized in the company's fiscal year ending December 1st, 2020. On top of potentially falsifying their revenue, the suit also revealed that Ignite was under criminal investigation for something unrelated. As a result, the stock was headed toward a new record low. However, Dan was able to fix this problem by removing Ignite from the stock exchange altogether. He provided no explanation for the company's removal. However, just 2 months later, media publication MJ Biz Daily somehow managed to interview Dan Bilzerian's dad, who said he is now serving as an unpaid advisor to his son's company and was speaking on behalf of Ignite because Dan was unavailable to comment. He'd state there is no reason to have a public company unless you intend to raise capital from public markets, before going on to state though Ignite was publicly traded, about 90% of the company's shares are owned by Dan and friends. Dan likely thought that as a public figure he should have a public company, although this structure provided no real benefit and instead delivered unwanted attention from governing bodies and the media. Despite this, it was reported in March 2023 that Dan was still refusing to cooperate with governing bodies, and while Ignite's privatization means its income is no longer public, it doesn't really seem as though business has improved. Dan recently bragged on Ignite's Instagram by stating, "Best-selling vapes in South America," although the very top comment was, "Bro, I love you, but I never seen anyone smoking that." Ignite's Twitter page gets about 30 likes per post. The company's official TikTok page has under 4,000 followers, while Dan Bilzerian's personal social media isn't looking so healthy either. His main Instagram page is losing 100,000 followers per month, owed in part to his complete inactivity, only uploading every once in a blue moon. When he does post, all of the most popular comments state, "So sad you have to pay for having ladies around you, haha, lol, such a sad life, and I don't know why I still follow this dude." In January 2021, Bilzerian
You know, they say the same thing about Cabby Lame, and he's done nothing but be awesome. But, you know, it comes with the territory of being an entertainer.
Aaron was asked, "Dan, why are you barely active over Instagram recently?" To which he'd respond with, "Cause I just finished the 25th edit of my book. It's finally done." Yet Dan failed to return to Instagram after the book's release. However, only a couple of months ago on the Skinny Confidential podcast, Dan gave an updated explanation for why he'd quit everything.
I just don't care. Like, I feel like social media is like a video game I beat like 8 years ago, and I'm like, everybody's playing the same game. I'm like tired of playing it. Like, I look at social media like a cancer. Like, to me, I think it's the worst thing to be happening to society. So I just just cringe to perpetuate that problem.
Dan seems quite resentful over his social media career and is perhaps sick of being hated. However, I can't imagine his next venture will make that any better. After seemingly spending a bit too much time with Andrew Tate, Dan Bilzerian is working on his own alpha male course and website called Sigma Society.
The thing I'm working on right now is a site where it's basically gonna like teach guys kind of like
Sigma?
What's that? Yeah.
Sigma?
Yeah, it's gonna like teach guys how to be guys. You know, I feel like this generation has kind of like lost that.
And while such a venture would surely find an audience, it feels like a last-ditch unoriginal money grab, which is almost always a sign of having nothing left to offer.
But yeah, I knew he wasn't telling the truth about the whole making 50 mil in 1 year from playing poker. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to comment, like, and don't subscribe. Twizzlers.